Friends, fans, family of me and Tee Off Sports. We are live on an episode of Back Nine Bets where we are going to be. It's the night before the Masters. It's like better than Christmas, Spencer.
It is.
Like, is this not the best night of the year?
I mean, I think anytime you talk about the Masters, like the thing that makes it so exciting is whether you are a diehard fan of the sport or you're somebody that just watches golf once or twice a year, everybody gets excited about it. And obviously, with Tiger Woods being in this tournament, that makes it all the better for the intrigue that's going to happen. So I'm very excited to do this show with you, Byron. It's technically my first time on this show, even though we've done a bunch of shows together before. I mean, I guess if you want to count the thing that you, Joe, and I did last week.
No, well, this is the first time I've got your undivided attention to myself. I'm not sharing you with Joe. You're not sharing yourself with Joe. It's just me and you, Model Combat style.
Yes.
We're going to go through this bad boy and just see how it goes. So it's going to be a great episode. We don't even really know where we're going with this all, but I'm sure it's going to take us to the land of wonderful places. So if you are watching, feel free to drop a comment in the live chat and let us know your concerns or queries, or if you have an on the fence type player that you're wondering about rostering or not, let us know. You know, we're here to help, we're here to please, and we're going to be doing the same thing with each other's players. So it's going to be a fun little go. I'll bring up my model here. We can't have a show called Model Combat without pretty much a model on the table. So Spencer, we've got Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, and Rory McIlroy. Talk to me. Are you playing all three this week? Are you leaning on one or two of them? Are you leaning on one? What's your process at the top of the board here? And what's your favorite play at the top here?
I know we differ a little bit on this, Byron. I think it's an intriguing spot we have here. And I'm kind of the person where everybody says they want to go one way with it. I want to do the opposite. So that has a unique answer to it also, because all three guys are obviously 20% plus owned. But there's a lot of people that want to full fade them. And then there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to play one. I think where you and I separate from each other, it's a very intriguing board to me, just with the soft pricing, to want to stick two of these players into my lineup and go from there. I think if I was to power rank the group, it would be Rory McIlroy number one, Scotty Scheffler number two, Jon Rahm number three. But I'm kind of in this spot right now where if I want to be 1.5x to what the field's weight is for ownership on Rory, like 1.5 to 2x probably for him. I think for Rahm, I can play defense a little bit and maybe go more towards where field weight is. And then with Scotty, kind of have an answer that's in between there. And when I do something like that, it's going to put me in a spot to where I will sometimes get them in the same lineups together. I will also get other spots to where this will build down into the $9,000 or the $8,000 golfers that I want exposure to also. So I do have all three of these in my player pool right now. And it really just comes down to the fact that I have about 35% of my win equity on these three golfers. Like, I don't want to lose that in the mix of trying to make a lineup to get unique here.
Yeah. And that's the crazy part about this, is that they literally, the three guys in this field are harboring about a third of the win equity in the field, which is just incredible. And I think if you roster two of them, you've essentially eclipsed 20% of win equity. And I think it's definitely doable, especially if you're going with Rahm and Rory. I've done a few lineups where if you find a gem of a 6K guy, you can throw in there, and then you have to probably roster about 3 7K dudes with the 2 10K guys. So it's definitely doable. I'll probably be doing a little bit of that myself. I have already done a little bit of that. I'm really loving how, I don't know, how are you seeing Jon Rahm's ownership shake out compared to the other two? Because if he's going to be 5% lower than either of them, I'm totally okay going a little more heavy on him just because, like, I think all three of them stand as good a chance, maybe with Scotty a slight edge in my opinion, but all three of them have pretty much the same opportunity to win this thing this week.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with that idea. I also, to answer your question before I start saying other crap here, but like I see 25% on Rory and Scheffler. I see 20% on Rahm. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily fully agree that Rahm is as likely to win as these two players. Like, to me, there's probably about a 5% difference. Like, I'm kind of in this range where I can get Rory, which is like the madness way of making a build, to about 14% of the win equity. I can kind of get Scotty into that 12, 13% range. And Rom gets stuck for me in most of these spots at like 8 or 9% when I do it. So that's a big difference if we're talking about 4 or 5% at the end of the day. But like it comes down to a bunch of different questions of how you want to build it. Because like you said, no matter which two that you put together, you're going to eclipse 20%, I think, in almost any proper way of running a model of how you want to look at that. And for me, I want to say 13 players. Like I have a 29 player pool right now, and 12, 13, or 14 of those guys are 7,100 or lower. So that's kind of where I have put myself in a spot where I have made concrete decisions at the top. I have a player pool that I am sticking with, and it's going to be how I'm going to make my builds. And I have all those players down underneath that I'm going to be mixing and matching where I can.
I love that. I think that's a great way to go about it, because we've seen, so the thing about Augusta and the Masters when it comes to DFS is it's the chalkiest of chalk when it comes to results and correlations of success. Course history, as we've heard on pretty much every single podcast in the world, is key. Now, the secret is, how are we going to dance around the course history without dancing the same dance as everybody else? Like we got to swim upstream a little bit. And how you can do that is by doing what you've done and taking a stance on some of the guys at the top, but then really trying to like really get a few extra dance moves in there with guys less than $7,100 like you've done. I mean, not a lot of people are going to be playing that many $7,100 guys, right? So there's really a lot you can kind of cling on to there. And I'll be really interested to see what a few of those names are, because I've got a few myself, but they're definitely not going to be as safe as what you want. But
of course not. Yes.
Yeah. You're going to have to do that if you're trying to be different, right? Especially at the top being chalky. So I don't know. How do you think that with the softer conditions, you're leaning Rory more, or would you still be this way inclined if it was just a drier, typical Masters type weather this week?
I would have leaned Rory anyway. When I add the softer conditions to the mix, that's kind of where I got this extra push with him, to where I want him to be my highest owned player up here. I think he possesses the best win equity. Scotty is going to be very close, and I want to make sure that I have some semblance of ownership that's going to push in that direction with it. But kind of to go to the point that we're talking about here, just with having to get more volatile down beneath, it's an 88-person golf tournament where top 50 and ties make the weekend. You're able to take more chances. I'm not saying that you need to go play Sandy Lyle at $6,000. Like, you don't need to make that decision, but there's a cutoff point. Like, to me, it's probably Mackenzie Hughes at 6,300 of like the last person that I am willing to put into a lineup. But there's a lot of guys in that $6,000 range, and I'm even willing to eat more ownership than I usually am down in that section. Like, I never, if somebody in the $6,000 range on a normal tournament is over 5%, they are just immediately canceled for me. But I'm going to play people this week. Like, I don't want to keep going down the board and like mixing and matching all these sections together. But like, for me personally, I'm okay playing Danny Willett down there. And I think you can still find ways to get unique with it. Like, there's so many different roster constructions, and like just having him in my pool, even if I'm going to go flat to what I think field weight is, that's completely fine with me.
It is. And I think you can definitely also like, let's answer the bottom of the board with a few. I think some of the answers to the bottom can definitely come in this 9K range. And there's someone like a Cam Smith, to me, is obviously, I'm a big Cam Smith guy. And when I was on the BetSpurt show earlier, I mentioned that for these live dudes, I'm going to pull the trigger on them if they got good course history here. I don't care what they've been up to over there. You can show up to your favorite restaurant and eat your favorite burger kind of thing. So I'm totally fine with these guys doing their thing. And Cam Smith's course history is ridiculously good. And we're going to get him at 10% ownership. I understand there's a bit of concern that there might be an injury with his wrist or something. But I've seen highlights of him in multiple days now hitting it just like 2 feet, on holes. So I don't know if that injury is more significant on longer shots maybe, or what his driver looks like. But his driver's always been a mess. I'm totally fine. 10% Cam Smith. Like, if you take out the name Cam Smith and just rattle off his course history here, 3 consecutive top 10s is more than enough for me to go back to a guy at $9,800 that's 10% owned. What's
Let
your
me
take
ask.
on Cam? Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, and then I'll give you my answer on Cam. How many players? So, what are you doing in the $10,000 section? Are you playing all three, or did you cut somebody?
I'm skipping Rory. I think I'm
Okay.
going to take that chance. I just feel like the Grand Slam. I know you've got an outright on him, so one of us is going to have a good week. I think. I feel like if he's going to be the highest, I think optimizers in particular are going to really like Rory because he's. You can argue he's the most, even if they're all the same output, potential wise, he's $500 cheaper than Scotty. That's just going to slide him into more lineups organically.
Yeah.
If he has another meltdown in round one, his life is going to be that much more difficult. And then I'm totally okay just riding his tailcoat in Showdown.
I have a sickness with this. Like, I know Rory always starts slow. I have built this whole narrative with my model in my mind that Rory's going to start fast this week. Like, I bet him to be the first round leader, even. I'm kind of just all in on this Rory train.
That is, if you go back into his past track record, dude, he has a period of time where he was the first round king, man. He was just coming out firing, but Augusta's a different beast. I think if you're going with course history, I think he typically gets off to a slow start. He's a very nervy golfer around this golf course. I think the history, the vibes, the expectations are really heavy on him, and it takes a few bad shots to kind of overcome all of that, which is totally human. You know, he's also just a human. We don't really think of him as that way, but he's normal. He's a normal dude. He pees, he poops, he does all that stuff that we do. I'm going to fade him. You know, I just don't think he's been showing me the consistency that Rahm and Scotty have over a longer period of time. Rory's probably got the lowest floor of the three, would you say? In general, maybe not this
yeah,
course.
I mean, that's probably a fair assessment. And obviously, when you're talking about him being the highest owned person, maybe in the entire tournament, that's a negative there. I guess the one counterpoint that I would give to it, and I mean, it's worth saying his second place last year is the fakest second place finish. Like, he steamrolled that leaderboard. That could have very easily been like a 20th, and it looks different there. So I wouldn't look too much into that. But the short game for me and the irons, the way that those two trends seem to be, like the trajectory that he's having, is what encourages me most about it. So I always worry about his 3-putt avoidance on this course. It's always the reason why my model doesn't think he can actually win. He's 10th this year in 2023 when it comes to 3-putt avoidance. The irons are also the best that they've ever been in my model, trending into Augusta here. But I guess to move on into the next section here. So if you're playing Cam Smith, how many players are you playing in the $9,000 range?
I've also started lineups where I've just skipped all of these dudes in the 10K range, because you can really, especially if you start with Cam, Max, and DJ.
That's the one path that worries me a little bit, though. Like, do you think you're losing too much win equity by going that route? I mean, I guess if you like Cam, you don't think you are, if you believe that Cameron Smith is in this range where the win equity is close enough to the top.
I think between those three guys, you could probably argue that Cam, Max, and DJ probably provide half the win equity that the top three guys give you at this golf course. That's me being very bullish on Cam. If you take, or Max, sorry, if you take Max out the picture, it's probably still sitting around about 12%, 10%. You know, like I'm just really, really high on his the fact that he's got terrible course history. That doesn't mean anything to me. I feel like I'm ignoring that. I think he's a different golfer. I think he's showing that he's the fifth best golfer in the world, Spencer. Like,
I agree with that. I mean, he's legitimately a top 5 player. We talked about this when we did our FSGA draft together. Yeah. He's a player that I would say that both of us are higher on than consensus on a normal week. You more so than me. I was a little bit late to the party with him, but I love his skill set, and I love his skill set for Augusta. But we kind of had this conversation. Like, I'd almost rather make him beat me still. I understand the leverage part of it, and I'm giving a lot of really popular golfers at the top here. But we also know that Augusta, it's that pronounced course history, and it's the rollover effects, and you see the same golfers kind of achieve success here over and over again. So, like, it's funny because our player pools are vastly different this week, and I think that's what makes a major championship fun, is when you're talking about all the top players in the world here, everybody can come up with different decisions. And you can just see naturally between the two of us how we're getting unique in builds to begin with here. Like for me in the $9,000 section, I would say my favorite 3 plays, this is in no particular order, would probably be Cantlay. I seem to be a glutton for punishment with him where I go back to him every single major. I love his upside, and at some point it's going to click, and I kind of tend to think it might be this week with the way he's striking the ball. I really like Xander and his short game here. Don't necessarily trust the off the tee stuff that he provides, but Xander's skill set is, I would say that this, and maybe this more so than anything, would be his most likely major that he's going to win if you were to make me power rank the 4. Like, I don't trust his off the tee stuff at the PGA Championship. Maybe he could win an Open with some of that short game of his if you put him on the right course, but I like him here. And then this is the one where I wasn't planning to do it, and this is where I kind of got myself into this build to where this player pool got a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be, because I planned on cutting Rahm and I planned on cutting this person. And when both of these 2 golfers entered my pool, now all of a sudden I have a much different outlook on this and a much different build that needs to be made. But I think I'm going to play Justin Thomas. I mean, he's currently still in the pool for me right now. I don't know if you necessarily have to go massively overweight to him. If you look at his 2023 stats, it's a negative trajectory. He's kind of just across the board worse than he was a year ago, but I love him at this tournament. He's the number 1 player in my model around the green. It's kind of like the same thing that I'm saying about Xander, that it's just such a good course fit that if you could tell me that I could make builds with those 6 players as the core start to my lineups and then figure everything else down beneath, like that's pretty much that. And Finau will be the core 7 golfers that I'm using. And then everybody else is going to be mixed and matched into there.
That's interesting, because I'm also like, Tony is going to be
popular.
He's going to be something to talk about, but let's talk about Cantlay. I want to mention Cantlay a little bit, because at some point, Spencer, you're going to be right about him showing up to a major. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't make logical sense outside of the fact that he's just doesn't have the mental fortitude to handle the pressure at a major, but yet he can stare down Bryson DeChambeau out driving him by 30 yards at the BMW Championship and just hole putt after putt, in playoff major type. I wouldn't know if you call it playoffs major caliber fields or pressure or anything.
A lot of pressure, though.
He's won the tour. Has he won the tour? He's won the tour championship before. So has he? Yeah. Two or 3 years ago.
2 years ago.
Or at least he's contended there, like he's used to these big events, and he's won the Memorial and things like that, which it's so peculiar that he struggles around you. And listening to him on the No Laying Up podcast, it was just like, this guy is so incredibly intelligent when it comes to golf IQ, and he just thinks that it is a matter of time until he starts performing. He doesn't really attribute it to any sort of issue in his game or anything, because he is, when I ranked some guys last year in strokes gained, he was not inside the top 10, I don't believe, in a single core 4 metric, approach off the tee around the green thing. But he was, I think, 5th or 4th in total strokes gained.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you that he is one of these guys that will undoubtedly just always have something available to his disposal to get the job done, whether it's pounding the ball striking, whether it's getting up and down every single hole. He's going to be doing that. And that, to me, in majors, is having so many reliable parts of your game. Like if Cam's putter doesn't perform this week, he's toast.
Yeah.
If Cantlay's putter doesn't perform, he's still got the ball striking. Like, I don't understand how he's not in these majors events, dude. It's so interesting. I don't understand that. Whereas JT has got that, the putter is the biggest concern to me. I was also just at his course history, and it's so freaking solid though. Like he's no like worse than 15th or 20th every single time he tees it up here.
I guess the discouraging thing about Thomas, and I mean, if you want to view it that way, is the putter has historically always been awful here. Like you can date this back to years ago, and I remember one of those Masters, him losing, I mean, I'm going to say multiple strokes with his short game, but it was more than multiple strokes. Like, I mean, he went absolutely nuclear in the wrong direction with it to where he just couldn't get anything right. And like, that's obviously a concern with what he's doing with his game right now, but I'm just willing to bet, like, it's a weird spot with Thomas at 300. What ownership do you see right now?
Seeing 15.
That's what I see also with it. And it's a cheap enough price with enough upside that I think he does have realistic win equity in this tournament, which, like, if I'm to compare him, and this is where we differ a little bit, I don't know what you think about Colin Morikawa, but I think he has more win equity than Colin Morikawa. I think he has more win equity than Max Homa. That's where we're going to be different. I think he has more win equity than Jordan Spieth and Cameron Smith. And like, that's kind of where there's not that big of a difference between Thomas and Smith in my eyes, to where, like, for a couple percent more, I'd rather take that high end upside that Thomas can provide. And as I said, I don't think you need to go 2x the field on the weight there, but I also don't want him to beat me at the end of the day. So I included him in my player pool. And then just to go back to Cantlay very quickly, because we talked about this the other day, and when I ran it in my model, I had the same exact answer you did. Number one player for me over the last 24 rounds in strokes gained off the tee, and yours might have even been from a longer duration of time than that. I don't quite remember, but that part of his game is so strong right now. That's kind of why, like, the ball striking is so good if he can just make some putts.
Yeah. The guy that's beating him right now is Mito Pereira, and I'm not in, that's out of Data Golf's rankings. I don't even, that's obviously fake news, you know? So he's essentially first off the tee over the last 24, which is, everything is pointing in the right direction. It's not like he's coming in, you're struggling. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to think about. I'm in on Cantlay with you. Sign me up. I've got a million Rainmaker cards of Patrick Cantlay. He's undervalued in that market as well, I believe. So it's just kind of, there's so many good golfers with such good, there's so many points you can make for each guy that it's so difficult. You're going to have to take a stance at some point in this range. And unfortunately, I'm in on Colin Morikawa. I've got him as a outright this week, which is something, because if you look at his track record, 44th, 18th, 5th, and also his 5th was a little sketchy. He was with Rory doing that same backdoor shuffle. But the putting for Colin Morikawa to me is mental. I've run the numbers, and in majors, I don't know if it's got to do with the fact that his ball striking in majors helps him gain putting or what, but he gains half a stroke more on average in majors than he does in non-major events. So to me, you know, like, if you think about Colin in all these majors, he's boxing those 6-7 footers more often than when he's playing the John Deere. He doesn't play the John Deere, but, you know, like playing some memorial tournament or whatever. He's so much more clutch on the short game side of things, and he's played well around Riviera, and he's trending in the right direction now. He's going to be playing this for the 4th time now, and his results have got better every single time. He's the best iron player in the world over the last year.
I mean, I think you said it best. You have to take a stance in the players that you're playing in. Like, for me, where I'm full fading somebody, like, if they're not a player that I've named that are in my player pool, I'm taking a full stance fade on them. And if Colin Morikawa comes out and wins the tournament, which is certainly possible with his irons, I'm not saying that that's out of the question with it, but, like, I'm trying to pick and choose my spots here, because if you start trying to throw every single player into a lineup, you're going to run into a problem. And like you said, there's very thin margins between most of these golfers. Like, yes, it comes down to ownership, and yes, it comes down to some of these answers and questions that you ask yourself, to where, do you trust this portion of his game? Well, if you trust that Colin Morikawa can make putts in a major and all of a sudden that stat can be better for him, I can understand it. And Morikawa is the one player that seems to burn me more than anybody else. Like, I'm never on him. I never think that the win equity is quite as high as the rest of the public does. And he wins more tournaments than not when I take that stance against him. But, like, unfortunately for me, it's going to be a fade. But it goes back to everybody's player pool is going to be slightly different. And I can't say that there's any golfer from not, like, what is the lowest ranked player that you have from $9,000 and up?
It is Max.
It would technically be Max for me. If I ran it for a little bit more upside, it would be Morikawa, I guess. So that's kind of my answer there of why I don't have them in my pool. But just one question really quickly before we move on past this, because I have to ask you the question.
Yes.
Are you just hoarding Patrick Cantlay Rainmaker cards? Is that what's going on?
I am hoarding them. I've got, I think, 5 or 6. I've got probably $1,000 worth of Rainmaker cards of Patrick Cantley. I've been investing far too much into this, but I believe that it's something that I can really have an edge on early on in the year. And he's one of these guys that just provides that floor, and that's exactly what you're looking for in Rainmakers. To just take a quick tangent, is you want safety because you've only got 5 guys you're rostering. The ownership is pretty even across the board. You're never going to see a chalky guy because there's only a certain amount of cards available. I love Cantley's and he plays well everywhere, so that's the thing, apart from majors, apparently. So we'll see what he can get up to. I think if he performs at a major this week, then we go to Harbour Town next week, and then that card is going to be worth a pretty penny. So I've got enough I can sell some.
Do you follow basketball?
No.
Okay. Do you know who Giannis Antetokounmpo is?
Yes.
Okay, so I hoarded Giannis cards. Absolutely hoarded them to like the point where I don't have as many now. Like once he became MVP of the NBA, I got rid of him, like a lot of the cards that I had. But I have an egregious amount of Giannis cards that are just sitting in my room that every once in a while when I need a Jason Day bet, and I'm like, I don't want to come out of pocket. I'll sell a Giannis card just so I can make a Jason Day bet at this point. It's kind of what the Giannis cards are being used for, but like it kind of reminds me of that situation because I got in on him when he was a rookie, and I was buying cards in 2013 when I was getting them for like a couple bucks, and now they're worth a couple $1,000 with it. So,
dude,
that's my Rainmakers. Like Giannis is my Patrick Cantley.
Oh my God, it's like a sacrificial virgin that you kick into the volcano for Jason Day outright every time you go.
Yeah, you have to have something. I mean, those bets add up.
We'll get to J-Day. Let's actually get there because I'll just recap my guys. I'm big on Cam Smith, Cantley, Max Homa, and Colin this week. I love those guys. I wanted to say Tony, but he's in the 8K range, so we can get there. I think
I'll say Xander, Justin Thomas, and Cantley for me in the $9,000 section.
Yeah, so we've got one overlap, and that's Patrick Cantley, I would say. Which is fine. I think we're doing it for the brand. We've got Rotoballers bases covered as best we can. Which, if you are not a Rotoballer subscriber and you want to join us, me and Spencer's stuff, go check out rotoballer.com. Use TOF for 10% off. Use Maniac for 10% off, and go get your stuff. We've got weekly, we've got annual subscriptions out there, all the jazz you can get. And Spencer's stuff's mostly premium, so you're going to want to get a hold of his stuff and check out what he's up to. Dude, your 7 Deadly Sins has been awesome. And I did a similar thing with Max, and the only thing that he didn't quite pop for was course history.
Yeah, that's the only reason why he got eliminated on mine. That's why, like, we had a discussion about Max. I could definitely see him posting a top 10-ish sort of result. And I think it's next year if he does that is where I think he actually can win the tournament. But until he proves that he can post a top 30 for me, like, I don't know what his upside actually is. I agree he's a different player than years past. I just don't know. Like, this is a course that you need that maturation process to it. And until I see it, I'm almost like willing to kind of just sit on the sidelines until then.
It's very valid because whenever I'm on Max, he never wins. And whenever I'm off him, he wins. So you're safe. I think you're safe. So we'll see. But I've had this freaking outright on him since the Sanderson Farms. So we'll see what we can get up to there.
What number do you have on him?
An 80.
Yeah, I was talking to Steffi yesterday, and forget Steffi had like 100 and something, I think. So you guys have great numbers, if nothing else.
Yeah, I don't mind having an 80. I don't know if I would. I'm not sure what the minimum number I would bet him at is. I'd probably say somewhere 30-ish, which is where he's sitting at right now. I think I probably still have landed up betting him that way.
If you give me a 40 plus, I'd consider it, but that's probably the range for me.
Yeah. And I guess, like I'm overriding my model to an nth degree because it's that course history is a quarter of my weightings this week. And it's definitely shoving him down there. We'll see what he can get up to. One thing I did notice, though, is he made the cut and was playing very well and then ejected over the weekend. It's not like, so maybe he just was like, oh, my God, I made the cut at the Masters. So we'll see. We've gone to great lengths to victimize and heroize or make Max the winner of this week's event. But time will tell, time will tell. So Tony Finau, DJ, JJ, J-Day, and Cameron Young. This is an interesting range, man. There's some massive ownership in this 8K range because they've once again fucked up the ownership and the price with J-Day. Like, what's he doing at 8.7? What is he doing at 8.7?
Like, we've talked about this. He's legitimately a top 10 player with the way that he's producing right now. And it's unfortunate. I do have some slight concerns about the weather and day this week. If it's cold, like, I don't know what's wrong with him. Like, the back might be fine now, but these little lingering things continue to pop up here and there out of nowhere. And you're like, well, I didn't realize he was still struggling with this, or this is going wrong and his allergies are acting up and we think it's vertigo, but it's actually allergies now. So he's just running the gambit of problems of everything that's going on. I worry a little bit based off of that answer. Like, I'm not going to be able to get him out of my player pool because I can't physically live with myself if he wins this golf tournament and I end up losing thousands of dollars because of it. Like, I need to make sure that Jason Day at least has something in my lineup, but that's what makes it so difficult here because I really like Tony Finau and I'd rather just play so much more Tony Finau than to play Jason Day, unfortunately, if I'm directly comparing. So it becomes one of those situations to where it's like, how much ownership do I actually want on Finau? That the answer to me is kind of starting to get up there. Like, I'd like to be 1.5x, 2x where he's at.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, how much can I actually play of Day? And that's kind of like this predicament I'm in right now.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is you've been mentioning 1.5x, which is, usually the general rule of thumb is 2.
Yes.
And I think in this event, that's a great little thing that I've noticed you've been saying a lot is 1.5, which gives you that opportunity to roster a few more guys, still getting an edge on the field, but not as big, but still covering your bases because there's, like we've mentioned, and you and I have got pretty much this entire slate in our player pools, basically.
This is the biggest. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing with this is there's different ways to play this, and I always lean towards the more aggressive route of usually being 2x plus on anybody that you're playing, and just draw a line in the sand. And if you are correct, you're going to win a lot of money, and if you're wrong, you're going to lose all your money. I'd rather go all in these spots, but I found myself in this position where, with a 29 player pool in an 88 person field. I can't be 2x the field on everybody. It's not going to work. Like, somebody's going to end up showing 0% if I run like some optimizer on it. Like, it's just not going to fit everybody in the way that I want. So I unfortunately had to make some decisions where some of these guys are smaller than others, but like Finau is the one to me that if I'm going to push the envelope and I'm pushing the chips in more so, it's going to be through him to where if I want to get to that 2x plus, it's going to be a Finau answer at the end of the day.
I have got the same issue with Tony Finau. I've got about as many Tony Finau cards as I do Patrick Cantley, but not nearly as much investment. Tony Finau is about 60% worth the value of Patrick Cantley cards right now, which is insane to think of. Like, this guy's consistency, especially in the Rainmaker territory, is unrivaled. Like, he's been pumping out top 20 finishes. Now, the two concerns I have with Tony Finau and Jason Day is if you look, they're identical if you look at their track record, as they have been so consistent, but finishing between 20th and 5th. Not once in recent memory have either of them really showed me that they in the mood to get frisky with contending for a lead, like a win. Like, they've been playing well. And does that change this week? Potentially. They've both played fantastic golf here before. But what have you shown me lately? And it's just showing me, if you're going to tell me that I'm going to have to roster 20% owned guy and the likelihood that they're not going to be contending for the win, if history is anything to repeat itself, they're going to finish inside the top 20, outside the top 5, and that's what you're going to get. If I'm looking at a Dustin Johnson, if he finds himself in contention, now that's the thing. It's like he's half the ownership, doesn't provide that safety at all. But at the same time, if he finds himself in the mix, do I trust DJ to really get himself in the mix? DJ likes to party. So he's going to get in the lead. There's a good chance he can, take care of business. But that's just my opinion, especially because I find myself getting very negative on guys the higher the ownership gets.
I do too. I try to find a reason not to play somebody.
Yeah. So that's it from a theoretical like standpoint, like, but is a T5 enough? Like if I told you now, J-Day and Tony Finau finish 8th this week.
Yeah, I mean, I would buy in if that you could tell me they'd finish 8th, but I'm more concerned. But and by the way, I think you have like my ownership on Dustin, I think is a little bit higher than what you have.
Okay.
I don't know if that. I mean, you might be correct on that answer, but that's the reason why I'm out on Dustin is
What are you
because
seeing?
I have 14.5%.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you probably trust yours more than mine, but I just feel like the live guys will most likely come in less owned in general.
What do you have on him?
12.
I mean, I think somewhere in that range is
Yeah.
is fair. Like that's fine to me. If you were to tell me that he was like 2% lower and I was a little bit too high on him, that's fine. I don't think that that's such like a astronomical difference there. But I guess to answer your question, I worry that Jason Day is going to come in 27th place and this is just not what you signed up for with all this ownership. And now you all of a sudden were better off not playing him. So, like I said, this is I trust my model in every single spot, and I'm being a little bit of a homer right now by trying not to get rid of him. But there are concerns from a leverage standpoint with Day. I have less concerns with Tony Finau just because I truly believe Tony Finau is a top 5 golfer in the world. And I think specifically for the Masters, I could make an argument, and I'm not going to push it this far to say this exact answer, but I think legitimately, my model is at least saying this. Like, I won't say it myself. Like, I think legitimately you could argue Tony Finau is the 4th best player for this course this week. And that's why I have an outright ticket on him, is because I actually do trust his ability to potentially win this event. And if my numbers are telling me that, I'm willing to take more of a shot there. And, if Tony ends up being Tony and comes in 10th place, that's fine. I mean, I think I'm still like, what is he? He's the 11th most expensive player. So you'd kind of be getting proper value on him while paying a little bit too much with the ownership there.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's just, it's a stance. We've established our situation, and I'm sure the fact that you're getting in on these guys will make a lot more sense once we start getting a little further down here. So I'm totally fine with that. I love Tony. I love him. I love him to bits this week. I think he's going to, and I don't know, am I making too big of a deal out of not finishing inside the top 5 regularly?
Well, I mean, he has 8 consecutive top 25 finishes to start this season. So that's fine. I think when we look at the ownership, yeah, there's a problem. But I mean, look, you're talking about a guy in the $8,000 range that to me is the 4th or 5th most likely person to win this tournament, like regardless of what any answer we're giving here. So I just think his ceiling is higher than what you believe his ceiling is. And that's where the difference comes into play. But like, it pains me to say it. I kind of tend to agree with you on the Jason Day answer, to where like that's where more of the problem comes in my eyes with it.
Yeah. So maybe I'll be out on Day. I'll let you run with him there, and then I'll go with Tony. But I have enjoyed putting these percentages into my model. I'm not sure why I never had this in the first place. Because it really just shows you, like, your model might suggest one thing, and then I wonder why is Tyrrell Hatton costing me all of this? And then it's because his T10 rate is hot garbage. I don't know why he's finished inside the top 10 at some point. I don't know why it's 0, but it's at Bay Hill, right? He was in the mix again. I don't know. He had a top 10 at some point. But anyway, it's nice to see, like, over the long run of time, how often these guys are actually in contention. Like Patrick Cantley and Rory McIlroy have a 53% top 10 rate.
Wow.
Which is nuts. So, like, that's why. And then if you look at Cantley, and he's like $70 less than Rory McIlroy on a Rainmaker card, just like I scratch my head. So it's curious stuff out there. Victor Hovland is not going to honey dick me with these short game lies until I see him chipping to 2 feet around Augusta. Like, he was interviewed and said, yeah, he's had a eureka moment. He's figured his stuff out. Yeah, sure. I've lost 25 pounds just sitting here. So What are you taking away from these boys in the 85 to 7K range?
So I'll tell you this: I am out completely on Dustin. I am out completely on Cameron Young. I think the difficult section here was that Sam Burns, Will Zalatoris range. I considered both of them. Zalatoris is like, to me, that's somebody I understand. Like, the ownership's kind of even gone up if we're being technical about it. So I think people have been more inclined to want to play him. That to me is like the Hovland situation in a different sense of, show me that you are actually back and you're over all the problems, you're over the injuries, you're over that. So I threw him out of my pool. I also threw Sam Burns out of my pool. Considered it, just can't play everybody. Think there's a couple other leverage spots that I could find down in this range. One being Matthew Fitzpatrick. I know we're talking about injury concerns there, but half the ownership from Zalatoris. I kind of tend to think that the upside to actually find success here might be a little bit better also. I'm in a spot where I like Hideki. I think Hideki at the Masters is always a really intriguing spot to be in. So Hideki is going to be a player that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to this week compared to what the consensus is. Hovland's a tough one, though. I agree with everything that you've said, but even with those answers, he's been fine here. Like 3 top 32 finishes, not exactly what we want, but like if we're making the argument about Homa where, he's had 3 finishes and only 1 time inside the top 50, and maybe this is the year he breaks out. Like, yeah, I agree. Homa has better upside probably than Hovland does, but I don't know. Hovland's actually shown me 3 times that he can somewhat be manageable at this course. And is this the year that he provides a top 10 finish? So he's one of those golfers that if I need to play a little defense on, like, he's going to be a player that is going to make my pool, but it just might be less than what I normally would want to be on somebody.
Yeah, but I feel like Hovland, you don't have to play defense because he's not going to beat you. He's going to just finish 20th.
I don't know. Like, what if he finishes in 5th place?
But he's also, like, if you're looking at his major track record, what is outside of the Open?
Byron, I like people, obviously, that don't win. I love Tony Finau. I love Patrick Cantlay in this. Hovland doesn't ever, like, contend in these majors. These are my guys.
You're sticking on brand, though. But also, I get it. At some point, you buck the trend, and you're either ahead of it or you're behind it.
It's wildly intriguing, though, how vastly different I think our player pools are this week. And I would say sometimes we run into that spot. Like, we never necessarily exchange, this is my player pool and this is my player pool, but we see our work on Rotoballer, and I know who you're on and you know who I'm on. And there's a good deal of overlapping here and there, but I feel like this week, like, I am on the complete right end of it. You're on the complete left end of it. And I mean, there's a middle somewhere with some of these players, but not as many this week.
Yeah, I love how we came here to give people the answers, and we've provided them with fucking, like, it's just like we've thrown shit at the wall, and it's just like a mess. If you're looking for peas, you can go grab some out of there. If you're looking for corn, it's somewhere else. But I don't know. Like, I did not see us being so adjacent to each other. It's ridiculous.
Okay, let me ask you this. And so you're in on Dustin. I'm out, obviously.
Okay.
Are you in or out on Cameron Young?
I'm in, dude. I've got him for an outright. So.
Okay, let's go to Sung
I'm
Jae.
in on a decky.
Okay, are you in or out on Sung Jae?
At 18% ownership, I'm out.
Yeah, I probably give the same. I have too much ownership in my build. Like, I have to lose somebody. I can't play Tony Finau, want to put Jason Day into a lineup somewhat, and then also throw Sung Jae. Like, at that point, I shouldn't even be playing the contest. Like, I've made no decisions. So, like, to me, Sung Jae is the one that unfortunately is just a victim of the ownership. Like, I like him. I think he's underpriced.
Yeah, he is underpriced. And I think I should go back and say that the reason I've been so aggressive in dodging the ownership at the top is so that I can take these guys like Sung Jae, who at 18% ownership at $8,100 is not going to make my lineup mega chalk, because I still have a Cam and a DJ in there, or a Cam and a Hideki and a Rahm. Like, I know Rahm's not necessarily getting off chalk that much. He's still got 20% of the field there, but I don't know. Like,
Byron, to answer that though, like, if like, let's say you go Rom in a non-Sung Jae answer. I think you've already created leverage in that sense with that route with it. Like, Rom's going to be the least of the $10,000 golfers, and then if you go DJ, for example, there, like, that's a unique enough build, and we're talking about 2 of 6 players. Like, that's what's important for everybody to remember. Contest selection and what you're playing makes such a vast difference with it. If you're playing some single entry, you really only need to get unique in like one spot with it. I mean, you can kind of play pretty chalky. If you're playing millionaire makers and you're playing these massive entry field contests, you're going to have to find a few spots to get unique, but it's never as vastly wild as you think it is at the end of the day. Like we'll get down to the $6,000 section, but all of a sudden, when you throw 2 players that are like 3-4% owned, you've already made the lineup vastly different from where you were going to be with somebody else's thing. So it's just something to keep in mind, though. But contest selection is the one real equalizer that you have to pay attention to.
Facts. There's no denying that, and the milli makers in particular. I think if you're starting, like, you have to get freaky. Like, you have to, in order to win those, you have to be willing to lose everything, right? Like, you can't play defense in those massive things.
I would eliminate, like, in those particular contests, I would eliminate Jason Day entirely. Like, that's where I would condense it down a little bit. Yeah. But like, you have to take stands in these spots. It's just, we're obviously taking different stands from what the other one's doing, which is what makes it unique. And that's where, I mean, hopefully one of us is correct, because if we are, it's going to be a big week.
It is. So Willie Z, you said you're out on Willie Z.
Yeah, I mean, I'm out on him just because I don't know what to expect, and I'd rather play Fitzpatrick, who I also don't know what to expect, but I kind of trust his upside a little bit more. I understand the course history with Zalatoris is amazing, and he could turn it on. And like, when I was eliminating players, he's one of the last players that got cut for me. Like, him and Burns, I considered both of them. It's just, I can't play. Like, I already have 6 players from $9,000 and up. I can't then all of a sudden say I want 6 players in the $8,000 range when I'm already going massively overweight, or at least overweight to some extent with Finau, and I want to be overweight to Hideki. So it was one of those spots where I'd rather play Hideki. I would rather play Fitzpatrick. And that just meant that Zalatoris was the casualty of that situation for me.
That's fair. So my take on Willie Z is, if you look at what his recent stuff is, it's with the short game, man. And to me, that doesn't scream like health deficiency. It screams he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing on the greens. Like, it's when he comes to Augusta, he knows what's up. The off the tee stuff has been fine. The approach play, not necessarily Willie Z capabilities, but also going to a place that he's going to be hitting a lot more long irons where he's comfortable out. I'm okay going there, especially at 82, 12%, like, to me, he's going to, if he's going to miss the cut, he's probably not going to miss the cut, but he's going to finish 40th or 5th and in kind of thing, 6th and in my opinion. Like, it's not going to be somewhere in between. He's not going to give a middling performance this week, which is,
I don't have a massive problem with him. Like, I generally agree with your stance there, but like, I guess, like, just personally for me, he misses the player pool because I don't have room for him. But yeah, like, I don't think that's I wouldn't tell anybody that, like, you have to 100% remove him if all of a sudden you're not playing any Hovland and you're not playing any Hideki, and, you get rid of Fitzpatrick and you'd rather start like a build with him there and Finau. Like, there's a realistic route to go. He's cheap enough to bet on the upside. It's just, I would rather bet on the upside in other spots than what you're doing it with there with Zalatoris. But, I mean, he's fine.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, what's your risk tolerance too? Like, are you looking for safety from a guy, or are you looking for just complete upside? And I think Willie Z provides you with like both, like, from a safety aspect, zero safety, like, he could snap his back and he lost 7 pounds apparently at some point.
Great.
I mean, he's so skinny. He must be selling his organs on the black market. How does he have any body mass to lose 7 pounds off? Like, I don't understand that. How do you lose that much weight?
I don't know. Like, my weight, I mean, I don't really gain weight, but my weight can fluctuate down also. So I kind of understand like that ability to lose weight with like a metabolism that just works very quickly for him. And if he's having problems with whatever, then he lost weight there. But I kind of understand that more than the average person does, just because it's so hard for me to put on weight.
Yeah, no, I can. Once again, I can vouch for the other side of the aisle there, because I can put on weight in a heartbeat. I can smash some Kit Kats in no time. All right, so Max I got our first comment about some players just outside of Stay Odd. He's also been chatting away in the chat here. We didn't even talk about Jordan Spieth, dude.
No, we skipped him.
Yeah, we totally skipped Jordan Spieth. So does that mean we out on both? We both probably out on Spieth.
Ownership is the answer for me. Is I'm just out because of ownership. When I did my 7 Deadly Sins article, he was one of the 12 players that could win. I think we know that he's great on this course, but I'm going to pick and choose my spots. And for me, I'd rather play Cantlay than to play Spieth.
Yeah. And I'd rather play Smith instead of Spieth too, because I feel like they both provide you with the exact same blueprint, as in incredible upside and also the volatility to miss the cut in going in, like, I don't know. Jordan, I don't trust him, man. I was on him at the freaking Valspar, and then when he was the time to shine, he just had multiple opportunities to make it right and didn't, so I don't know. And he's won here before, but also there's guys that he's just, out. Sorry. Can't do it. Cam Young, I've got to outright on him. The distance thing is just, it's too much to handle. I think he's going to overpower this golf course, especially in these wet conditions. And when it comes to that, the distance becomes even more important, because even less people can make it to these par fives. And he's one of the few guys that can still continue to have eagle putts when, 90% of the field potentially, depending on how wet it gets. I don't know. I'm making up a random number, but the more distance you have, the less the conditions will impact you, because all your stuff is coming through the air.
And I think he's second or he's at least top 5 in my model for weighted proximity for this course. He is, I have too many stats on here. I'm trying to scroll through. He's sixth for me. So, he's kind of in that range. Like he's one of the only players that adds that elite high end distance and then elite high end proximity for Augusta here. But I have my concerns that I've talked about all week with the short game, that I don't know if he's going to be able to put it together.
That's the thing. And my friend Ron Workhouse, the Best Boots with, got a text in the DMs from Paul Sorry directly, and said he's giving Cam every single information. Like he's just going to town on just all this trade secrets of Augusta. And I think that's exactly what Cam's been missing, right? Is that. So if he can prove to us what he's been doing at other majors at Augusta this week, man, oh man. And I've got some Cam Young Rainmaker cards too at very cheap prices as well. So Sam Burns, I'm out on. I don't, I'm with you there. At least we got something to go with. Matthew Fitzpatrick's approach play is just atrocious.
It's always bad,
but in particular lately. So out on him for me. Shane Lowry also, when you got nothing over the last 24 rounds, popping inside the top 30 at like $7,900 and 8% ownership. I'm not entirely sure. Even though the course history was solid year last year, he's not playing the same golf he was entering last year, right?
He's not. And I'll actually give a bet on here that I haven't talked too much about this week. You can find it over on Bovada if you have access to that book. But I took Tyrrell Hatton -110 in a full tournament head-to-head matchup against Shane Lowry, kind of for all the reasons that you said. The 2023 metrics for Lowry are really, really like bad. He's almost outside the top 50 in every single short game number that I tried to run. And I have a bad feeling that Lowry is either going to miss the cut here, or if he does make it, this might be a bottom end finish. And it kind of goes back to when Hatton trashes the course last year, and all of a sudden now everybody remembers that and it sticks in their mind. Nobody wants any exposure to Hatton, but like, to me, that's one of the spots to try to get unique and different. I see, 6.5%, 7% ownership on him. And, I think we both agree, if nothing else, he's a top, what would you say, 15 player in the world from a statistical standpoint?
Hatton?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you take a look at just his last 3 months of golf, he's 11th in this field of strokes gained last 24 rounds.
Yeah, so I think we would agree with that we're at least in the same general range. Like, if this wasn't Augusta that we were talking about,
Yeah.
Him and Jordan Spieth are like very, like you could pick one or the other to me. And I would say, yeah, like on a particular course, I'd rather have Spieth, which I would give that answer here. I'd rather have Spieth for this tournament if price didn't matter. But like, I don't think there's a big difference between those two players. So I am going to have ownership to Hatton for that reason. And taking him on against Lowry felt like a good spot.
No, I love it. In my 82 bets article, 88 bets, I had Minwoo over Lowry at plus money.
I'm not a big Min Woo Lee fan, but
Yeah.
like I like that view more. Like I'm so out on Lowry. It's incredible right now.
Me too. Especially when he's just like walking around with his teeth flaring at everyone. Like it just reminds me of Wild Hogs, you know, when the guys show up and they just got like bugs in their teeth because the one guy was smiling the whole route. I feel like that's what Shane Lowry does when he's riding a motorbike. Anyway, I love Hatton. I mean, his game transcends to this golf course so nicely. The long irons in particular, lengthy golf course, makes so much sense. So he's awesome. Joaquin Niemann, Justin Rose, Tom Kim, Tommy Fleetwood. We'll get to Corey Connors in the next bit. But Justin Rose, man, you know, like this is where I think I might pounce on a guy that's a little chalkier in the $7,800 range. If you look at his recent course history, are not great. But if you look prior to like the last few years, Justin Rose has got he's got 2 run-up finishes at this golf course.
Okay, let's take away ownership for a second. Justin Rose, Joaquin Niemann, Tommy Fleetwood, Tom Kim. How do you rank the 4?
Justin Rose, Joaquin, Tom Kim, Tommy Fleetwood.
I think the way you just said it would be the exact opposite of what I would pick. So I would say Tommy Fleetwood, Tom Kim, Joaquin Niemann, and Justin Rose.
Jesus Christ, Spencer. Are we going to agree on like...
Model combat is in full force right now. I mean, this is the epitome of 2 models just clashing with one another.
It's fire and ice, baby. That's what you're getting here. It's should be sponsored by Trojan this week. So yeah, tell me why Tommy Fleetwood's going highest for you.
I mean, there's a couple reasons. I think from a safety and an upside perspective, I kind of trust him the most from that answer there. I really, really like Tom Kim from an ownership standpoint. I think that the public as a whole, like he went from a golfer that everybody thought he was the top player in the entire world there for like 3 months ago, and now nobody wants anything to do with him. I understand it's his first time playing Augusta. He's gotten some practice with Tiger. He has Ricky Fowler's old caddy on the bag. That should help him. I'm not necessarily adding as much distance as you are. And maybe that's the one thing that separated both of our models here is that Tom Kim didn't, I mean, he got hit and dinged a little bit from that, but like he's 19th overall for me. And we've seen elite players of the Jordan Spieth level come to Augusta in the past and find success. So even if I don't think Tom Kim is necessarily going to win this event, all of a sudden, if you get a top 10 finish out of Tom Kim at 4.5% ownership, like that is how I am now separating my build from all this chalk that I had on the top. Like he's a really nice person to throw in for me. So I love him from an ownership standpoint. As far as Fleetwood is concerned, I mean, a lot of it comes down to the short game from him. Like he's number 1 in my model in the weighted around the green that I ran. That's pretty much through a 2-year perspective and from a 2023 perspective. And kind of just every single way that I ran numbers with him, he was inside the top 25 of most of the things that I cared about. 11th in my model in a weighted strokes gain total for this course. So I think he has a nice built-in floor. I think he has a relatively high ceiling to where, you know, until Tommy Fleetwood wins, obviously, like you can't say he has win equity in these events, but we don't necessarily need that. Like you need it a little bit more because of the ownership that we're talking about here. And like, I know he's going to be a divisive person where some people are going to just want to throw him out of a lineup because of the ownership, but I'm okay. Like if you're telling me that I think he can come inside the top 15 and I'm getting him at 10%, 11%, that's certainly enough for me. And then really for Rose, it's kind of the biggest ownership of the group mixed with a statistical profile that worries me. Like the short game, great. That we can point to the short game with him of the weighted numbers that I've run, and that's going to be great with him. He's inside the top 20 for strokes gain total, but there's just certain things in my model that it worries about. I guess like the number one answer to that, and if you want to make the argument that he has found success on this course before and he understands the nuances, okay, I understand that with it. But any of the 3-putt numbers that I've run are alarming. And I don't know if I necessarily want these alarming numbers popping into my model for a golfer for me that from an ownership perspective, like, he's like 15th for me overall. So I would rather take a Tom Kim who's the 50th owned player if I'm directly comparing.
And we're now potential that we could land up getting injected from our own pod, but just putting that out there. But I love Tom Kim. I mean, if you're looking, there's not going to be that many guys that are going to be sub 5% owned. So if you find a few, you are good to go. Like I'm all in on taking that stance. And my biggest issue with Tom Kim was like he's 31st. The bogey and birdie rates are pretty solid for him, but the par 5 scoring is, I think, what's driving his number down a little bit for me. But when you put him close to a green for a third shot, which is what a lot of these guys are going to be doing this week, I've just got that opinion in my head. He's most likely going to be the best from that range. Like he's so solid from like anywhere with an iron in his hand.
Byron, it's a funny thing through about half that answer. And I don't know if it was on my end or if it was through everything. So you cut out for like half the answer for me. So one, I don't know if Joe has hacked your computer and now all of a sudden we have that. Two, I don't know if Rotoballer is listening to this podcast and it's like, these two assholes can't decide and agree on anything here. So we need to take them off the air with what's going on right now. But no, I mean, I caught the end of what you said there. And yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It obviously wasn't meant to be. So we'll just let that fly into the abyss in the black hole. We got Max here asking, okay, we'll rapid fire this and then keep going down. I'm in a pool that'll be 15 to 1,700 people when you take one from the top 10, one from 11 to 30, and one from 30 to 1. 31 and out. So just 3 people right now. If you're going to pick a top 10 guy, who's it going to be?
Rory.
Cool. I'll say Scotty. If you're going to take a guy from 11 to 30,
that is in are we using DraftKings pricing for that?
I don't know. Just kind of I have no idea. I'm assuming they've got some sort of a tiered system, ranking system, but sure, let's go with let's start at Tony Finau. Let's start in the 8K range.
I mean, obviously, like when I start this Rory and Finau, this is about as chalky as you can get with a start with it. But I almost would rather just start with those two and get unique. I mean, if you're picking 2 from 11 to 30 and then 3 from 31 plus, I think there's certainly a way to get unique by going that route. So I guess I would take Finau, and then if I was to get different from there and try to create a little bit of leverage with what I'm doing, I guess I would say Hideki.
Yes, I love that. As your second pick?
From the 11 to 30 range, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I can second that for sure. I think I'd go DJ. Just from, I'll get different here, and then maybe where does 30 end up here? So Corey Connors will fit in that. It's going to be from Adam Scott and South, which we haven't really even got to yet. But I don't know. I would take Seamus Powers from
I would probably too.
Nice. Ooh, we're going to like some Seamus talk then. Cool. So that's that. Thanks for the question, Max.
I'd probably I think he needed to take 3. Like I would probably, this is, I know where we're different. I'd probably take Alex Noren. I think he gets unique and different there. And
yeah.
I mean, the last spot, I mean, we'll talk about some of these players and we can figure out who fits into that group.
Yeah. So my whole reason that I've gone crazy is I'm going to probably have a lot of Corey Connors this week. Course history is so good, and he's popping. I think he figured it out at the match play, and he's rolling it. And he's that salary saving guy that's just going to allow me to just load up on Max, DJ, and Cam kind of stuff, and then put in a Corey Connors type situation. So, are you in or out on Corey? Yes, I figured. No, that makes sense because you
But
can't put him in your lineups with all the guys you've picked.
Like that's what I was just about to say. Is it actually makes logical sense that we would be completely against
Yeah.
each other because of the range that I decided to get aggressive. You completely faded, which then put you into this section to where you have a lot of these golfers like the Corey Connors that have a lot of ownership, where you can play them. And like I'm going to be honest, I don't necessarily like him as much as you do. Even ownership aside, there I have some concerns with his form entering this tournament. I know he just won an event. It's a weird answer to give based off of that. But yeah, I mean, when you add the ownership to the mix, like I'll throw another name in there. Like I'm out on Minwoo Lee. I'm out on Brooks Koepka. I'm out on a lot of these players trending down from this range here.
Yeah. I'm out on Brooks as well. I might play some Minwoo. I just love what he can do with his explosiveness, on this. He's so long and his driver's a bit of a problem, but to me, he's basically Cam Smith-ish in a way, and he's that T14 on his debuts, it speaks volumes to me. I don't know. And the short game is so good. I'm out on Adam Scott. Like he's not really, even looking at this year, like when he's gone to Adam Scott golf courses, he really hasn't really shown any real form. Genesis, he just kind of messed around at the back of the pack, although he made the cut. I'm in on Sahith. I like some Sahith, dude. And I don't even have to play a lot of him. He's going to be that 5. If you had to pick between Sahith and Tom Kim.
I would play Tom Kim, but with the Sahith answer, I know Nick Bretwish is also in on him. So I don't have a problem. I didn't put him into my player pool, but I don't have a problem with him. He's one of those guys where if you want to play him, sure. Like there's upside, obviously.
Yeah. Love him there. I know we're out on Bryson, both of us.
Yes.
Yep. Siwoo Kim, in or out?
I am in on Siwoo Kim.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be too, because this is my range where I'm going to pick the guys that I have. I'm going to take my chances on a little volatility with the best players in the field and then try and pounce on these guys down here like we've discussed already. So
it's a little bit, kind of a lot of ownership from what I'm doing from my build, but he's one of those fits where I still think it works fine.
Yeah. I'm in on Keegan. The last time Keegan played here was 2019. Can you believe that?
Keegan is really good at golf right now.
He's very good, and he fits this profile apart from like the short game side of things.
Yeah.
The around the green play has been really bad, but from a ball striking perspective, there's not many guys that are, Taylor Moore is like one of the guys that rivals him in that department, but I feel like Keegan's veteran presence in a major is going to be just fine. He's got zero expectations on him going into this week. You don't want a Keegan that's got the world on his shoulders, Keegan. You want a Keegan that's just playing freely, eating jerky every 5 holes and just rocking and rolling. And I think with the Aim Point Express stuff, he's going to be pretty solid. And his 3-putt avoidance is really, really good. So Keegan's in.
I'm in with him too. So there's at least something that's similar.
Yay! We'll highlight him pink just because we've got some sort of semblance of togetherness here. Taylor Moore.
Markets like him. There's a big difference when you look at his DraftKings price and some of his betting numbers. I think from a betting perspective, if you like him, there may be a reason to try to attack. I'm going to be out though.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I trust him as a first timer versus like a Sahith, especially with I love Sahith's short game. His ability to scramble gives me hope at this venue. He's scrappy, whereas, Taylor Moore's short game in general is most likely going to be his downfall here, even with the ball striking being so good. Patrick Reed, I'm out.
I am out. That answer mostly comes, just for the record, because of ownership.
Correct. I mean, there's a lot to like, but also, what have you shown me lately? I mean, there's not a lot that's going on there. Tiger Woods, in or out?
I'm out on Tiger, but I am betting Tiger in a matchup against Sergio Garcia. That's how I'm going to get my exposure.
Yep, because you're essentially hoping Sergio misses the cut.
That's what I'm hoping for, essentially.
Yeah. I've got in my bet article there, I had Tiger Woods finishing T20 after round 1. Like, I think you got to attack him early, and when he's in good health, and then watch him limp around, Saturday and Sunday. So I love that round 1 showdown, round 2 showdown. Sign me up. Miro Pereira, according to Ron, Back is broken, essentially. Guy's back's all jacked up. Are you in or out on Mito? I'm assuming out at this ownership.
I was out.
Yep.
Even before that information.
Dude, holy cow. We got Tiger Woods, Mito Pereira, and Louis Oosthuizen. Talk about the ambulance brigade over here. Just injury prone central. So Louis, I'm assuming you out as well. I mean, he could literally WD from this event as well.
I considered betting Taylor Gooch in a round 1 matchup against Louis. Didn't go there, but it's on the table if you want to consider it. Like, I wouldn't talk anybody out of it. So yeah, I am very out on Louis.
Yeah. I'll tell you who else I'm going to be playing in the 7K range is Keith Mitchell.
Yeah.
Bend putting, fantastic stuff. And then you get what's going on here? Par 5 scoring for Keith Mitchell is pretty solid. And then the driver, dude. Like, if you're going to start your round, like, your hole is going to be starting off in like first to second base for Keith Mitchell every single time, and then figure out from there. You know, like, his momentum is going to come from the driver, and hopefully he can get it together. He's a Georgia boy, I believe, has played Augusta many, many times, and he has played here before. So I love what you can get from Keith. Are you in or out on Keith?
I'm in number 1 player in my model for weighted total driving here. I also, like, we've had this conversation. I think he's legitimately a top 20 golfer in the world at this point.
Yes, exactly. And he's shown that he's absolutely capable of doing this stuff in elevated events too. You know, it's not like he's been getting in the mix with guys at the Valero. You know, he's been doing some stuff at big boy courses, the Genesis, you know, like a lot of guys that have played well at courses like that I'm in on. Kurt Kiriyama and Russell Henley are 3. I like all 3 of them, really, but I don't necessarily know who I'm going to go with. I don't know if I'm going to go with all 3 even. Do you like any of those 3 guys?
So I like Kirk from an upside perspective. I don't love the ownership. This might be one of those spots where I do throw him into some lineups just because I do think he has the ability to pop here. I'm out on Kitayama, and I kind of, the more I run numbers, am starting to really like Russell Henley.
Yes, dude. I was doing the FanDuel DFS piece, and I pretty much, all I did for FanDuel's selections is I just took course history, and I found guys that have got great course history. And if you're doing it for the last few weeks or the last few years, Russell's not going to really pop that much. He's 41st, but he's played this course. He's actually old, dude. He's got like Augusta course history going back like 8 years. So
he has 5 or 6, I mean, 5 consecutive top 31 finishes here, I want to say, is the number.
Yes, dude. And it makes a lot of sense because I think he fits the mold of a Zach Johnson, Trevor Immelman, Mike Weir type thing, where he's going to be hitting wedges into the par 5s, which I think this week is going to definitely be more of his wheelhouse than the prior editions of this tournament. I think we're going to see a lot more wedges in his par 5s. And if you're going to have a good wedge player at this kind of range at 6% ownership, I think we'll be together on Russell Henley for sure.
Yeah, I like him.
You got a matchup bet against Sergio, so he's out. I don't trust him at all. Billy out.
I'm out.
Yep. Nothing. It's just a dark red mess of ball striking, which I don't think I like there. Tom Hoagie just won the par 3 tournament today, which makes a million % sense. Just give Tom Hoagie like 9 straight wedges. He's most likely going to do something. I like him. You know, I can afford a lot of these chalkier guys in this range where I'm dodging the crap and kind of going to Hoagie guys, and I like him. What do you think of Hoagie?
This is where I got stuck. So my model does really like Tom Hoagie. I had to get rid of some ownership somewhere, and Tom Hoagie was one of the cuts for me. But if you're building this in a different way, he is underpriced 100%.
Yeah. Like if you take a look at this model and don't even look at the numbers, but just look at the colors, there's 2 pink boxes for Tom Hoagie, and they're the 2 most important categories. It's baseline approach and baseline weighted proximity. They second. Like, to find a guy with multiple pink boxes in this range is rare, and it often sends me to him, you know. Yeah. So he's one of the best iron players in the world, and he's 16, he's in the 6K range.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with him at all. I obviously agree with all of that. It's just I can't play him. Like I had to cut him at some point.
No,
And because I did take a stance and I am playing a very popular player down in this section. So it was either that golfer or Tom Hoagie, and I went with the golfer that I went with.
Cool. So who's that golfer?
Taylor Gooch.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my model's got him at 16th in the model. I mean,
I'm at 20th.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at what he's been up to, he profiles really nicely for this golf course. Outside of his recent form, obviously, that's a black hole of live propaganda, but I love what he can get up to. You know, if you look back at past times he's played here, played nicely before, only one time though, right? So,
Yeah.
I like Taylor Gooch too, dude.
Thoughts on, I mean, you're out on Bubba.
Out on Bubba. I love the flyer aspect of him, but it just, to me, it doesn't make sense. You know, like if you look at his last two showings at Augusta, very middling to bad. You know, I think he missed both cuts. So
I'm out on Bubba also. Peters out on.
Yep, out on Peters. Can't do him. I'm all in on Seamus. Like I'll probably have him in a fifth to a quarter of my lineups. I love what he does at majors. Like he's played only 4 of them. The one he missed was the Open Championship, which was like in his home continent. Yeah. So what was he doing anyway? Then you get 2 top 12 finishes in 2 majors last year in his debut appearances at all of them, and made the cut at Augusta in his first go around, 27th.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
I agree. Yeah. I'm going to play him. The ownership, the price tag is too cheap. The ownership is too cheap. I'm in. He's going to be a golfer in this section, like specifically when we're looking at the ownership here, that I will find myself 2x the field on. I'm going to be trying to fit him into much more lineups than some of these guys we're talking about.
Yes, I love him a lot. I know you're a big fan of Alex Noren.
Yep, that's probably my favorite play in the $6,000 section.
Talk to me. Tell me why. Sell the people.
So there's a couple things with Alex Noren here. One, I like to back test these tournaments and tournaments of the past here. So Alex Noren to me had the most similar qualities from what we saw with Danny Willett when he won this in 2016. It's that short game that he brings to the table. It's the upside in my numbers of how I ran it. Like Willett had that same similar trajectory for upside with the short game that you would think would find success here. And it obviously took implosions and, from Jordan Spieth to win this event, but we don't necessarily need Alex Noren to win. If Alex Noren wins, I'm going to be a very, very, very rich man at the end of this tournament, but we don't necessarily need that. Like I have him to come top 10 at 14-1. I have him to come top 20 at 5-1. I have him to come top 30 at plus 240. I bet him outright at 340-1. So I did kind of just sprinkle the board all the way across with him, and he's very volatile. I understand that, but we're also talking about a golfer that's like 2 to 3% owned, who has the best upside numbers that I can find in this range if he does put everything together. So you have to pick and choose your spots. You kind of have to take volatile decisions. And this is where I can start getting unique with my builds. I had all the chalk up top, and I have guys like Alex Noren and Seamus Power and Harris English and some of these players where I'm going to just start sprinkling them in.
Cool. I love that. I'm in on Noren with you. I mean, look at this. Again, pink boxes over here, and it's short-term and long-term stuff. He's got multiple pinkies, and that's what you love to see in a guy that's in the 6K range. The short game's great, dude. And again, shorter, he's going to be one of those Trevor, Mike Weir, Zach Johnson type guys, which Brian Harmon is not, although he fits the mold. I'm out on Brian Harmon. The approach play, just hot garbage.
I mean, it doesn't take much to talk me into Brian Harmon, but specifically for this, I am going to be out, and that pains me to say.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that, because it's also like, Jesus, I don't know. You said you like Harris this week?
I do like Harris English. So this is from a 2-year perspective here. So it's kind of like a big duration of time that I'm running it. Number 1 player in my model in expected bent grass putting for me here. So That's an intriguing thing. Like, I mean, we're talking about a $6,700 golfer to where he is as boom or bust as you can possibly be. And if you tell me he comes in dead last place in this tournament, I would believe it. And if you told me that he made a run and he top 10 this event, I would also believe it. So I'm throwing a dart here at a golfer that's sub 5% ownership, and I'm hoping that he can hit. And, and if he does, let's try to fit him into the right lineup with one of these guys on the high end nature that I have all the ownership for.
I love it. Because who's going to pick Harris English, but also who was sitting on their couch watching the Arnold Palmer Invitational and then saw Harris English finish second or third?
Yeah.
Like, how does that just happen? Just out of nowhere. That's what he does.
That's what he is.
Like a Houdini. He just shows up and disappears whenever he feels like. So you barely have to roster him to get, leverage on the field there. And 5 to 10% of your exposure on Harris English can go a long way and differentiate you there at 3%. So I love that. I'll jump all the way down here. Are you buying the hype on Danny Willett this week, or are you skipping him at 6-ish%? You had $6,600.
I hate the ownership. I absolutely hate the ownership, but I can't say I kind of like the profile. He's a past winner here. Like, obviously there's reasons to like him, and he has multiple top 25 finishes on top of that. So I don't have a problem with anybody who wants to play Danny Willett. I think you can go that route, and I'm not the person that ever wants to play $6,000 chalk, but I kind of generally tend to think that he's a little bit safer than maybe. I don't know what your thoughts are on him, but I think he's a little bit safer than what most people would think for a chalky $6,000 guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go with Cam Champ instead of Danny Willett. If you take a look at Cam Champ's, he's got course history that ranks out as 13th, So what I do is I take course history strokes by round average. And if you've got less than 8, I'll prorate it down. So if you only got 4 rounds, you're not necessarily going to be that good. But Cam Champ's got 12 rounds that's finished, I think, inside the top 30 every single time.
Yeah.
And even higher. He finished inside the top 12 here last year. That's what he's doing back in the field. So he's not playing well at all. But if you think about distance and hitting long irons into holes, he's absolutely got the ability. He's a Cam Young. The reason Cam Young's third in distance and not second is because of Cam Champ.
If you could tell me that he was, and I know he's not, like, I'm not asking the question necessarily, but if you could have told me that he would have been 1% owned, I see like 5.5%, 6%. So
on Cam Champ.
Yes.
Oh, see, I'm seeing 3, which is interesting. I don't know. 5.5 makes a bit of a difference. That's double, so.
And it might be too high, obviously. I mean, like,
what are you seeing Danny at?
I see Danny at 7.85.
Yeah. So you got these two guys a little higher than I do. I still like Cam, Jesus, what's 3%, at the end of the day, in a field this big. And I did mention this earlier, is like, we've got 88 guys, but only 70 to 60 of them are capable of winning this thing. So you're basically playing a weekend showdown slate, ownership wise. Yeah.
I think legitimately, if we're talking about who can win this event, like that has, I mean, if you're talking about players that actually have some sort of win equity, yes, like 70 players, I would say like 20 players can win this tournament in reality. And then you're dart throwing down in this section here on any of these names. So if you have something that you like in Cameron Champ, and obviously the distance is going to be that answer, I understand that. I am not playing him just because I'm not playing him because of a lot of reasons. I mean, the current form worries me, the ownership worries me, but it's another one of those situations though, too, where I think you start running into a really bad risk if you're considering playing Danny Willett and Cameron Champ. I think you kind of have to pick and choose your spots here. So I would rather, you could play neither, by the way, but I would rather play Danny Willett over Cameron Champ if I'm directly choosing.
Francesco Molinari, out.
He's out for me.
Yeah. Svensson,
he's out for me.
Kokrak,
out.
Kevin Na.
I'm playing Kevin Na, and I feel gross about it.
Me too. Let's go. Dude, another live guy. And if you look at Data Golf's like recent strokes gained approach, he's right up there. Like, he's a sneaky good iron player.
He's great. He's great in my model. Yeah.
Yeah. He's really good. And obviously the lack of data that we have available has got him all jacked up in mind, but he's played great golf at Augusta as well. You know, like 17th in course history is amazing for Kevin Na, and he's $6,500. So he's one of these guys that I was talking about that you can absolutely rely on to at least make the cut around you. You know, like that's going to be totally fine. And at $6,500, that's you need a top 30 from the guy and call it quits. But he's been doing that and more. So love Kevin Na.
What percent are you planning to play him right now?
I'd probably play him in like 10 to 15% of my lineups, maybe.
Yeah. I'll probably be a little bit less than that, but that's also with my player pool being more extended than I wanted.
Yeah. And again, I haven't cut my stuff down all the way. I've been kind of using this as a practice to kind of get there. So once I start sliding these guys in, they'll probably be casualties, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So I try to not play guys less than 10% exposure, because if he has a great week, I'm not capitalizing on that. Like I don't want him to be in two lineups that have two guys that have missed the cut. You know, I want him to at least have a chance to be in the optimal situation. So I'm going to play a little bit more of him. I'll be playing, dude, 15 to 20% Charles Schwartzel.
He's been good here, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, past champion, had a fifth or a third or something recently, and then just some solid results. You know, the last 3 times he's been out here. Love him in the first round in particular. I think he's going to come out the gates hot and then kind of fizzle away, you know, as his game kind of deteriorates. So that's going to be my approach there. I've got him for like a top 20 in round 1. Give me some Charles Schwartzel, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be out on him. I'm out on Adrian Moronk. I'm out on Phil Mickelson. I think the player for me that I am going to try to get some of my exposure to instead of Schwartzel, and man, this guy takes my money every single time, Harold Varner.
You in on Harry?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't play Harold Varner when you want him to win. You play Harold Varner to finish 25th after going into the final round 4th.
Yeah. This is one of those ideal situations too that we're talking about with these live golfers where you do have a reduction of ownership with a handful of guys down in this range. And I think Varner is probably the one that experienced it the most of anybody. I'd like to think that if he was on the PGA Tour and giving you results that Harold Varner had given historically, I'm not saying he'd be much more expensive than this, but I could see him 7,000 in this field, and I could see him 8 to 10% owned. And now all of a sudden he's out of sight, out of mind. And I see 3% in that 6,500 price tag. So I know what I'm getting with him. To me, he's another boom or bust option to where if the distance and some of that can play for me, then all the better with it. And if it doesn't, I mean, in reality, what's the most ownership that I'm really going to get to him at the end of the day? Like if I had him at 10% of lineups, like that's the max of it. And I mean, I don't even think you need to go that high in reality. Like I agree with you in a general stance. You want to make sure that you get enough exposure to some of these players, but I think I can get 7.5%, 8% of Harold Varner and be perfectly fine. And that's really just talking about a lineup or two here or there.
Okay, so that's a question I wanted to ask, because for me, I've only got probably 30 lineups that I'll have this week, 30, 35. So 10% of that is 3, you know? So that's why I want to have a cap at like more than 10. How many do you do typically in a week?
Well, when I'm giving answers here, just for the record, I'm talking about max entering 150 plus lineup sort of thing. So, the game completely changes when you reduce lineups. You should be like, if you're playing 20 or 30 lineups, this player pool should be getting chopped way further than even what we're talking about here. Like you want to cut this much further. I don't want a 30 or a 29 player pool with 30 lineups going. And I mean, some of these answers maybe aren't necessarily the best for everybody out there listening, but I think it still helps to say these are the 29 golfers that I am playing if I'm building 150 plus lineups. From there, you can obviously cut people down to make it more doable. But yeah, like I would agree with you. I'm not wanting to be in a spot where if I'm playing Harold Varner and I'm making 20, 30 builds, that I'm just throwing him in one lineup. Like I'd rather have a smaller player pool and much more exposure in those situations.
Perfect. Yeah, that's why I totally agree with you on that, and it makes sense because having him in one or two lineups you're not gonna really capitalize off that much.
No.
So, Mackenzie Hughes is probably the final guy that I will land up playing this
probably
week.
The same for me. I am intrigued, and I know I shouldn't be because the form is absolutely horrible right now, and I expect a miscut from him, but I kind of sort of liked KH Lee. I've included him just because I thought there was enough upside, but you're probably looking at a miscut, so I don't think you need to go too high. But yeah, Mackenzie Hughes for me is also the last player that I had penciled in as a player that I wanted to use this week.
Yeah. It's nasty down here. Like
it gets bad.
There's no min price guys that you want to. I mean, they literally, the average age of the min price guys is like 60. The social security stipends these guys are getting in the 6K, the bottom of the 6K range is like millions of dollars.
Pretty much down from, I mean, like, I guess I won't include, I'm not playing Scott Stallings, but I won't include him into this mix here. But like down from Mackenzie Hughes and Stallings, it's essentially every amateur, every 70-year-old player, and Kevin Kisner. That's what you're looking at right now.
Exactly. That's it. That's exactly the problem how did Kiz even qualify for this event? What's his criteria?
He won something last year that probably got him in, I guess.
Jesus Christ. It's just a mess. I mean, he's got no business in being in any event right now. Not even like at the match play was he in contention, and that's his like bread and butter stuff. So
legitimate question here, and I don't know what his head-to-head matchups are, but would you rather have in a head-to-head matchup Kevin Kisner or Bernard Langer?
Ooh, I think Langer can make the cut here.
I do too.
Barely, like barely. But he's one of the premier Champions Tour guys. Like I don't know. I think he hits it as far as Kiz, and arguably has probably got a better short game right now than Kiz.
I would rather play Langer. I mean, I guess who is the worst player that would be like the last name that you would take over Kisner? Like, okay, would you take Fred Couples or would you take Kevin Kisner?
I would take Freddie Couples, dude, because he's got a legit chance of also doing this. Yeah. I have Fred Couples for a T20 in round one at like some ridiculous number as well.
Let me look to see who Kevin Kisner's head-to-head matchups. I don't want to spend any more time on him, but let's see if there's anything out there that
makes sense.
So he's plus 108 against Zach Johnson, who is minus 129. And I don't necessarily love Zach Johnson. I don't love that price, but I would rather have Zach Johnson if you're making me pick. He is plus 155 against Schwartzel.
What's Schwartzel, like minus 190?
I think it was minus 200 or something. Yeah. And then
That's
for
steep.
A round one matchup,
would you bet that Schwartzel over Kiz?
Not at that price, probably. I mean, I'm not as high on Schwartzel as you are either, but I'll tell you which one I might consider. I don't think anybody's going to technically have access to this, which is the problem, but there is a Kevin Kisner versus Fred Couples round one matchup.
Ooh, and what are the numbers there?
So Circa has Fred Couples plus 115, Kevin Kisner minus 135, and then Bookmaker has Kevin Kisner minus 141, Fred Couples plus 111. You do have access to Bookmaker. I think Fred Couples should be the favorite. So at the very bare minimum there, you're getting like 11, 12 points of value. And
let's go.
I'd have to run the numbers, but I would guess based off of that, you're probably getting a couple more than that even. You're probably getting like 15, 16 points of value.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And especially Freddie's back. You want it while it's still warm, because that's his problem, is he breaks down over 4 rounds. He can't do it for that long. I love it. I love Fred Couples this week. He's such a fun dude. His swing is so elegant still. Like in his like old age is still crushing it out there. So sign me up for some Freddie Couples.
We found something that we agreed on. Take on Kevin Kisner in every aspect that we can.
We like Kevin Na, we like Alex Noren, we like Russell Henley. Do we like Abe Answer together, or is he just highlighted for the wrong reason?
I decided not to play Abraham Answer. He was one of the last players that was removed from my player pool, but I don't have a problem with him.
Okay. And then pretty much anything above 8K, we do not have a collaborative effort on there, apart from maybe Hideki. So yeah, that was freaking awesome as always. I love having you on, Spencer.
It's a lot of fun.
What is your like ideal situation? Like, what are you wanting to get out of this week? Like, I know that's a really random question, but answer it in any way you want. Like from a betting perspective, from just a viewing perspective, what are you excited about?
I would like to see Tony Finau win. That would be massive for me. I think in any sense that you want to look at that, the Finau answer would be the optimal route there. That's kind of the answer that I've been giving for months to anybody who's asked me the question of who's going to win, and Finau was my answer over and over again. I've obviously gotten to the spot now where Rory seems to be my pick if you were to ask me who's going to actually win this golf tournament. But can you even imagine that we get there? I mean, I don't think it's possible, but we get there on Sunday and it's Rory, Tiger, final group. Like, it would break golf.
Oh my God. Yeah. With like Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm in the penultimate group kind of thing, with Spieth and Cam Smith in like the third last group. I mean, there's potential to have incredible storylines. I hope, dude, even imagine if it's Patrick Reed and Rory McIlroy in like the final group.
Any live golfer and Rory McIlroy would be an exciting finish.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm low-key looking forward to the Ryder Cup because Scotty Scheffler is going to be teeing it up, hopefully in like some sort of an anchor match against either John Rahm or Rory.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the craziest part about all of this too, is the rotational world number one situation is I'm sure that's on the table. If someone wins, if Rory or Rahm win, they probably world number one again.
I would think you're right with that. I haven't looked into it, but I mean, it's
close. You know,
I know, like when I went and I looked because I was curious the other day, and there's betting odds of who's going to be number one at each specific point of the year. And surprisingly, the favorite pretty much in any range that was a couple months out. Well, before I say it, who do you think the answer would be?
John Rahm.
Rory was the favorite almost in every market that I saw. That's at one book, and I've not run numbers for this, so I'm not like standing by that being the answer there, but Rory was the betting favorite, very slight.
Yeah, I gave you my answer. I probably would have suggested that Rory would be because I think just everyone loves him. You know, like from a popularity perspective, nobody really actually loves Rahm. You know, like, and Scotty's just so chill. Like he's just there. You know, he's just vanilla.
Yeah.
I've got. If a Cam is in the mix this week, that's not Cam Champ. I'm in paradise. You know, I've got those two guys. I think my card is just boom or bust. I'm either out of it early or I'm in it, you know, and it's going to be fun to watch. Hopefully it's the other, but we'll see what cooks.
Like from a season long perspective, I have so much exposure to Cameron Young that like part of me hopes that you're correct based off of that answer, because I'm going to be ride or die with him, but I don't know. I also have money against him in a head-to-head bet with Jason Day, and I have 0% ownership in DFS. So there's a lot of that's what I don't like about doing season long golf, by the way. Like the one negative thing is I don't want rooting interest of any kind on a player that I have, like, because I have the same answer with fantasy football, and this is the answer I always give. I used to put all this money on these football games, and I would care more about these random stupid fantasy football lineups that I had going, where I'm rooting for players to score that are it's going to lose me much more money if they do. But I'm like, I need to win this matchup. I can't lose this. I can't lose this week. And that's what's like not fun about season long golf for me, if there is any downside to it.
Yeah, it's, and the same with Rainmakers, because you can land up with a lot of golfers in there. And I guess that's the problem is your exposure rate is you're probably investing too much into the fantasy, right? So
from a mental standpoint, at least, and I don't really understand why. I think you've learned this about me to a fault. I'm a very competitive person. like
Dude.
like very, very competitive person. That might be like, I think people that watch the PGA Draftcast have kind of learned that about me over the course of time. Like, it's not a shtick that I'm putting on. Like, I really do want to win. But that's like the one thing, like, yeah, I'm easygoing in a lot of ways with stuff, but I want to win.
I mean, if you're betting for a living, that you have to be that way.
I've always said this, and I guess it's better now that like I have a platform on this golf side of things. But like, if you look at, I'll go back to another basketball answer. If you look at Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or any of these guys that were just super competitive, and it's like, Michael Jordan plays a board game and he breaks the board game in half, and it's like, wow, that guy is so competitive. Well, it's less fun when Spencer plays a board game and I rip all the Monopoly dollars and flush them down the toilet. Like, that's not what anybody cares to see. And that's kind of like my mentality. Is I've always been very athletic growing up, and I played a lot of sports, and I have that mentality to me where I need to win and I want to win, and anything that I do, I want to put 100% effort in and try to be the best at whatever it is I'm doing. So I mean, it works well from like a content creation standpoint, because at least you can be like, oh, this guy's competitive, but he's trying to, make it in this space and he's trying to better himself. But it's not as much fun when you kind of realize like that I do have such a competitive nature to myself.
I would rather be that way than, I think since I've grown up, I'm the complete opposite, Spence. Like, that's the problem, is like, I don't really care. Like, it's just, I'm going through the motions.
Nice way to be.
I know, but at the same time, you can land up not hitting a winner in 6 months. So that's just that's a slight downside of feeling that way. But
yeah, but like Byron, like the one thing I'll say to that is I feel like you've also, I mean, it's a small sample size. You've probably been running on the wrong side of expectation. Like, I think if you were to find the expected value that you should have in some of these spots, like the Spieth ticket a couple weeks ago could have very easily won. I know you've had some close calls here and there with it. So, golf betting is really difficult. It's, I think, why both of us always preach to everybody listening. You want to make sure to get exposure to non-outright markets. If you're just betting outright bets, you can go through these 6-month runs where you're not hitting anything. And the majority of my exposure on my card will always be in head-to-head wagers, and I'm going to have placement bets. And I'm going to try to build a card in a way where if I go cold for 6 months, I can keep the lights on and I can still be profitable at the end of the day. And I think even if you look at like what I've done so far this year on my Roto Bowler picks, I started really cold. I didn't really have anything going. Like, it was, but it was break even. The head-to-heads look good for me. So I was kind of in the spot where I was up 5 units, down 5 units, kind of in the spot. And then Taylor Moore wins all of a sudden. And now, I'm up 11 or 12 units, and hopefully we can keep this moving right now. But I guess that would be my biggest piece of advice for anybody gambling out there, is just make sure that you're structuring your cards in a fashion that this doesn't become some boom or bust nature. And it's kind of the same answer. Like, I'm more conservative when it comes to DraftKings and DFS. I like playing cash game lineups, and I like to find ways to bankroll, find like sustainable bankroll growth things. It's great to enter the Millionaire Maker contest, but probably one of the worst EV spots that you can find on the board. Yeah. You're better off just spending more money playing a single entry, putting into something with 100 people than, trying to spread out $100 and trying to hit something in that. So it obviously comes down to an entertainment level too. Like, everybody does this differently. I'm betting this from a professional sense that I am trying to make money doing this, and this is my livelihood at the end of the day. There's some people, and I've had this explained to me, and I had a coach tell me that, which this is the ultimate, like, I would go out and for the sport that I was doing, and it turned into what are the bets that you're going to do, and what is this, and are we going to play poker later, and all this stuff. So it became this gambling thing, but he explained it to me best, which the way I never thought it. Like, for him, spending a couple $100 on a wager and getting that entertainment level is more important than anything else, because he would have spent the same money to go watch a movie, or he would have spent the same money to go out. And you obviously have to gamble responsibly at the end of the day with it, and you can't gamble for more than you need to do. But everybody has a different end game goal that they want out of this. Some people are trying to build a bankroll. My goal in this space is to try to help people grow and build and earn money. And like, that's my strategy to go about it. But there's different ways that people create content, and there's different ways that people put out content. There's different ways that people bet. So I think once you realize where you want to land, that's kind of where you can make better decisions on how you want to play this.
Absolutely, Spencer. That dude, that was if there's two people listening right now, and I think they're whoever they are, three now. The third guy just showed up and
We're
he's going to
going
miss
up
out on
after
some.
that answer.
Yeah, he's going to miss out. If you just showed up now, go rewind for 3 minutes because Spencer just shared some seriously important information there. And I'll just add on one thing. You mentioned that you want to be sustainable, and now there's some people out there that I see just hitting outrights like crazy. Like that's what they're good at. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I'm very good at picking outrights. I'm the kind of guy that uses this model and grinds out T20s, T40s matchups like you've mentioned. But that's me. If you are good at outrights, go in on that road. Like that, it might not be sustainable long term, but if you've got a track record that you are good with that, get in on that. Like I don't necessarily think you have to portion your card to a certain. If you might be a good outright better, but bad at matchups because you're good at picking a guy's upside versus consistency.
Yeah, like outright King 59. I've told him this before. I've never seen somebody hit as many outrights as he hits for a person that doesn't stack their card with a ton of exposure. He's incredible in that market. And I would give a similar answer to you. Like, I think I'm okay with outright bets, but I'm never going to be the person that's going to hit a million of them just because I don't have enough exposure on these cards. But I am going to build it in my bread and butter. I'm going to have my matchups lead the way. I'm going to have the placement bets lead the way. I'm going to have these varying markets, and everybody has a different answer what they're good at. And if you can find what you're good at and you can find a way to grow with your bankroll doing that, that is my biggest piece of advice is just find what you're good at, find where you can find your edge and go from there.
Yeah, no, that's it, man. And then if that's not even your thing, just blow your money and enjoy it, and be fine with it. That's totally fine too. Like we're not all here to become millionaires betting. So we can all be winners, at the end of the day, however you want to classify a win. So Spence, I'd ask, I'd say, where can people find you? But I'm sure that if they're watching right now, they do. But we're over at Rotoballer, bro. Like Rotoballer is cruising right now. We're doing great things. I have loved being a part of the team with you since being on there. I think Yumi and Joe have been doing great. We've got Ian on the squad now too, kind of growing in his role. And we've got a few new news desk guys and everything. So Rotoballer is starting to cruise. I encourage you, if you're not part of any sort of subscription or anything and you're looking to get a really affordable thing, join us. Like we're in the Discord. Me and Spencer are, a great pair of guys to kind of bounce ideas off. We've obviously got such varying perspectives, although we kind of use the same basis. So
I think that's a really interesting point, though, is that we run numbers very similarly in a lot of ways, and we came up with polar opposite answers, and we do quite a bit. And that's what's fun about it is we try to inform people and we try to help people and we try to give answers. We're never going to be the two that are going to say you must make this wager and this is the only thing you can do. That's why both of us release our models out there. And I've always wanted to be in this space to where I can help somebody become a better, sustainable better. And if that's by using my model or being able to make answers of your own, we all have different books, whether it's on the legal front or the offshores, or if you have some random janky that you have to meet Bob on Monday to pay off your debts from this or get paid your money. Everybody has different places that they're getting their bets available at. And that's an important thing to note because matchups are vastly different from every single shop. And if you can run numbers of your own to where all of a sudden you look at it and you realize, oh my God, this person should not be the favorite in this matchup. This price is like off. Even if you can't exactly figure out what it should be. And like, I think as you get more sophisticated, you start getting those answers more and more with it. But once you can start creating numbers for yourself, and once you can start creating where the edges are for yourself, that's where you're going to see that big difference, because then you can make some of these matchup bets that people don't have available, take advantage of it and grow the bankroll. And that's what I believe at Rotoballer we do extremely well, is that there's very few people in this space, and there's some really good sites out there that provide similar things, but there's very few people in this space that provide models out there that you actually can use and look at. And I think for the price that we have the subscription for at Rotoballer, you get a lot of stuff. Like you get our picks, but we're never going to be touts at the end of the day. If you want to take our picks, sure, follow them if you like what we have to say. But you also have the ability to use statistical information, build models. We have an optimizer on Rotoballer if you want to throw some of these names in. So I'm really proud of what we're doing, Byron, at Rotoballer. Joe, obviously, add him to the mix of this too. I think the three of us have really built this site this year more so than we've ever been. And, like you being an addition and now Ian being a part of the team where he's adding great content for us. So if you're not doing so already, at least consider checking us out. And at the bare minimum, we have free articles out there. You can also check out those. I mean, we're going to give you answers in there too. Like we're not holding punches to where only like the really good stuff is behind the paywall. You're going to get more information and more stats behind the paywall, but we're going to provide all the information that we can in a lot of these articles.
Amen, man. Amen. And that's exactly the one more thing before we get out of here is I feel like you and I are so transparent when it comes to the things we put out there. Like we're not going to hoodwink you to joining us for no reason. Like I'm not going to tell you to use Code Maniac to come and follow my picks when I've been horrific. Like you must know that what you're getting into. And when it's going good, I'm going to let you know it's going well too. So I love our honesty. I love just the general approachness that we've got at Rotoballer. So it's going to be a great year. It's going to be a great week. We've got the bases covered here between you and I. And yeah, dude. Go check out the Better Golf Pod, which I think you and Nick have obviously got out there already. And that's usually my last thing I do while I'm putting my lineups together. I love listening to what you guys speak about. And go check out the draft cast that you did as well. And that's
if you haven't yet, check out the show that I do with Steffi Small, Match Play. I am very proud of that show that the two of us are putting out together. It's unique. It's different. Mm-hmm. We are trying to add a different flair than you get on some of these shows. And, Steffi is really, really, really smart. Like Steffi's really good at what she does.
Oh, dude. It's such an awesome dynamic as well. I'm so happy that you guys have done that and it's growing rapidly. Like the traction you guys have gained in the last little while is incredible. And it's warranted. Like you said, she's super smart, turned on, switched on, the whole shebang there. So is turned on, switched on, same thing. With you on the pod, I'm sure that's the case in any way. So yes, took us an hour 52 to say something very sexual, but that's what you get. Yeah. So
I just want to say this really fast and then we'll get out of here because this is turning X-rated. I had to bite my tongue the whole time that you were talking about all the pink boxes of that. And I just was like, I'm just going to leave it at that. We don't need to go any further than that.
I know Scott Holdridge watches this and giggles every time I talk about a pink box for a guy. So especially when he's got two, it's real funny. So yes, this is what you get an hour 50 in. So get some good life advice and some fun nonsense that we talk about too. So Spence, thank you so much.
Thank you, Byron.
As always, we'll do this again soon. And thanks, guys, for joining in and like, subscribe, do all that jazz. I don't really often ask for that too much, but since we're here, go and do that. So happy Masters Week. Let's have a good one.